It's so much easier to do these from home instead of after the fact. Here's the one that many people wanted to hear about. Hello, YouTubers. This is a noobifier on the 8th of March, 2024. There was an hour-long Star Citizen Live Q&A about master modes. Here's what you need to know. Yogi, Rich, Michael, and Brent. Jared asked why the developers sometimes test under pseudonames. The answer was pretty obvious, that they don't want to be an AC, for example, for testing, just to get mob attacked by a bunch of randos due to the CIG tag. Questions were taken from Spectrum, questions were selected by the developers, and then questions would be answered on the show. Yogi confirmed that all ships need to have the same effect applied despite being either combat or non-combat, and what he meant to say is that they're actually considering how master modes affects all ships, not just the fighters. For balancing purposes, they said that they have a base set of values for various types of ships, like archetypes, but then each gets further dialed in based on what we know about the ship. But tuned ships can and will be further balanced. They haven't fully decided on how quantum traps will work with master modes. Chat was a little bit frustrated by that answer, and then they said that that answer was not because they don't know what they're doing, but that they need to get a system in place before addressing the other system. And then they confirmed that a player can remain in nav mode at all times, but that many features will simply not be available until you switch over, and that includes your weapons, but also mining and salvage equipment. And then Jared said that there's no place in Star Citizen where you can just fly around, that you will not be open to attack. There were many more questions about quantum interdiction, but all of the answers were the same. They do not have specifics about how that system will work in master modes, and when they get more information, we will find out in the future. Master modes will have no effect on how ships fly in atmosphere. The changeover time between master modes will have different rates. Based on the quantum drive that's fitted and the ship, some will switch quicker or slower than others. In general, larger ships will take longer. They did confirm that despite wanting to avoid jousting that we have seen in 1v1 fights, that this will still occur, and the situation that this will occur most frequently is when the two players are in very similar ships. Master modes is being added, but this does not mean that it's the final state and that it's complete. It can still change, and Jared even said that like other features that were tested in the past, it could be reverted or even removed. But I don't think that that's the case with master modes. They seem pretty happy about it. The developers were asked about the players who negatively comment on the new mode. Rich said that some players who used to dislike the feature have changed their mind, and then Yogi said that there is feedback, but eventually a decision will need to be made by the company, a direction to start with. He went on to say that the feedback, when constructive, either positive or negative, is greatly appreciated, and then he ended by saying, give it a good chance, test it properly before offering feedback, because that's most helpful. Remember that live and PTU are for features that are in a state to be added, and the experimental PTU servers are there to test ideas that can be seen as brainstorm ideas, and they may not even be intended to be added in the future. Jared then said again that we should continue to test before offering feedback on the experience. There are some posts about how master modes seems to lower the skill ceiling. Yogi somewhat agreed in general, but then pivoted on that question by saying that the point of entry is also lower, which is better for new players. He then amplified that it's his belief that players can still gain a skill advantage with these new systems with more practice and better familiarity. Another comment was that master modes may have damaged mobility in racing. Nav mode does feel as if there's less control, and Jared did say that the current tracks that were made are based on the old flight model, so perhaps those tracks need to be updated to better suit master modes. And then Yogi confirmed that this should be considered and possibly adapted in the future. In nav mode, weapons are non-functional, so a question was asked, what are the turret gunners supposed to do when the ship is just bombing around in nav mode? And they said that, like we already know, they're adding a bunch of other tasks to do, such as maintenance and other things. You can just hang around the ship, look out the window, right? So don't worry about it. It's still a multiplayer MMO. The power triangle still has a purpose in nav mode. The shields are still generating into a buffer despite not being active, and the weapons are still generating into a buffer despite not being active. The countermeasures will not be available when in nav mode or when switching to nav mode, and they have indicated that they have no plans to change or test changing this in the future. Jared then suggested, why not pop countermeasures and then switch to nav mode and then bugger off? And then they ended by saying that in general, there has been an overall positive response to master modes. And that's it. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. Fly safe, and I'll see you in the verse.